He's going to attend via Zoom.
Do we have a quorum?
Yeah.
Make sure Damien is on here. Good morning. Item 1 on our agenda today is called to order. It's 9:30 a.m. on August 24th, 2023. I call this meeting of the Citizens Clean Elections Commission order. With that, we will take attendance. Commissioners, please identify yourselves for the record.
Galen Payton.
Damian Meyer.
Amy Chan.
And Commissioner Titla, are you here? He's late. Okay. We do have a quorum. And I am Chairman Kimball. Item 2, discussion possible action on minutes for the July 27th, 2023 meeting. Is there any discussion on the minutes?
Mr. Chairman,
Who I couldn't tell who was speaking. Commissioner Chan?
I was going to move that we adopt the minutes as written.
Okay, it's been moved that we adopt the minutes for the July 27th, 2023 meeting. Is there a second?
I'll second.
I heard Commissioner Meyer first, so second by Commissioner Meyer. I'll call the roll. Commissioner Chan,
I vote aye.
Commissioner Meyer,
Here, or I.
Commissioner Payton.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. The minutes are approved 4-0. Item 3, discussion possible action on the executive director's report. Tom?
Hi, yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Just to hit some of the highlights from the last month, the qualifying period for clean candidates began on August 1, which means that candidates who are going to participate in the public financing program are out there now collecting $5 contributions, and we're providing trainings to those candidates. And since last time we met, the legislature finally adjourned for what it's worth. There is a report on the final disposition of the bills that we're following in the materials if you have a chance to look at it. You can see that you've continued to have an active outreach agenda, and despite it being summer, and then I guess I categorized this wrong, but I also wanted to mention that Kara, our longtime assistant attorney general, is now a senior litigation counsel at the attorney general's office. So that's exciting and a warranted recognition of her contribution, certainly to our agency and to the attorney general's office as well. I wanted to mention that if you all are interested, the election procedures manual process is in the phase now where they've collected public comment, and the secretary's office is going through and compiling that before they will send whatever their sort of final edition is to the attorney general and the governor. And then, there were some materials made available by the bipartisan elections task force that Governor Hobbs convened. And the proposals that at least have been disclosed are in the packet. I think that those are the main issues I wanted to hit. We do currently, just so we're all clear, we have, and I think this is right, we have 3 active lawsuits related to Prop 211. They're in various stages of briefing. And so, we'll see how that develops. And if we need to, bring you more details on those, we will. The 2 immediate pending issues are, the Center for General Policy and the Free Enterprise Club filed an amended complaint that we will have to address, and then the president, the president of the Senate and the Speaker of the House filed their own action along with a motion for a preliminary injunction, which is that case is framed around essentially separation of powers type issues. So that really concludes the executive director's report for this month. Unless anyone has any questions, and assuming I haven't missed anything.
I have a question.
Commissioner Payton?
So how many are we having good participation on the trainings or?
Mike, I don't know what the right way to, do you have a sense of that?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, we have, I've put on 3 workshops so far, and we've had a total of 8 people attend. So that's not too bad this early in the game. So
Okay.
we're doing pretty well.
We are
Thank
continuing.
you.
Oh, sorry. I wanted to add, we are, continuing to do, Avery was out at an event directly talking about participation last week. Mike, Avery, and I have all met with a number of different folks who represent different organizations that work with candidates about the participation. So, we're, obviously participation has been lower, but I think there's some demand there, or at least some interest from some folks that we hadn't previously heard from.
Any other comments or questions from commissioners? No? Thank you. We'll move on to item 4, discussion and possible action regarding adoption of proposed rules related to the Voters' Right to Know Act, Proposition 211. We've been taking public comment on the first set of rules to implement Proposition 211. Just by way of background for those attending either here or online, Proposition 211 is an initiative passed by some 70% of the voters in 2022. It requires the disclosure of the original sources of funding for large campaign media expenditures, $50,000 for statewide elections and $25,000 for smaller elections. It includes local elections and initiative and referendum campaign media spending. Proposition 211 tasks this commission with rulemaking in several areas. The first set of rules generally deals with basics like calculating due dates and definitions. It also deals with more technical aspects of the act, such as the opt-out requirement. Under Proposition 211, people who have to file reports must notify donors of their opportunity to opt out of having their donations used for campaign media spending. Another technical provision is how to address a person's claim that revealing their identity would cause them harm. Beginning next month, we'll look at additional rules related to enforcement of the act. As you can see in the memo staff has prepared, there are several rules for which we have de minimis changes, which I understand is lawyer talk for minor, insignificant. Going back to English, changes or receive no comments upon. If the commission would like, we can discuss those first, and I would entertain a motion to adopt. Then I would move to the rules that receive more comments. So the first rules I'd like to consider are R220-802 time calculations, R220-807 record keeping, and R220-808 advisory opinions. Is there any discussion or questions for staff on those proposed rules from commissioners? Hearing none, is there anyone who wishes to make a comment on these 3 proposed rules? No one here in the room. Is there anyone on Zoom who wants to make a comment? Okay, not seeing anyone. Is there a motion on those 3 items?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Chan,
I'll move that we adopt the three items you named. It's item under our agenda item 4. It's items B, G, and H, I believe.
is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Commissioner Meyer. Just to clarify, Commissioner Chan's motion refers to R220-802, R220-807, and R220-808. Any discussion on the motion? I will call the roll. Commissioner Chan,
Aye.
Commissioner Meyer. I think
Aye.
you.
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioner Meyer. Commissioner Payton.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Those three rules are approved, 3-0. Next set of rules I'd like to discuss are
4-0.
4-0. I'm sorry. Thank you, Commissioner Payton. The next rules I'd like to discuss are R2-20-801, definitions and rules of construction, R220-803, opt-out notices under ARS 16-972, R220-804, exemptions from disclosure under ARS 16-973, and R220-806, communication with commission staff and others before the commission. First, I'd like to have Tom give us an overview of the comments that we've received on this. Then I'd like to hear any questions from commissioners, and then any public comment, if there is any, on these items. Tom?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. I don't want to, entirely rehash what's in the memo. I think that, we got some very helpful comments, some comments that are generally, I think are improvements, but not substantial changes to the rules. We also got across all 4 of those, the rules that the chairman identified, I think suggestions within those memos from that we've call for, maybe additional review, additional rulemaking down the road. So, I think that what we tried to do in evaluating these comments and how to incorporate changes, was look at whether or not, we the suggestion would create an administrative burden or enmesh the commission in more transactions than it may otherwise have been. Right? Our staff, our perspective was to the extent that we could. That the statute is already speaks to an issue, and that there is that there is a place for a procedural rule on our part, like how to access the exemption or how to go through the opt-out process. That we would adhere to those and try to not get into every different level of possible transaction. There's good reasons for that in terms of allowing underneath the statute itself regulated folks to be able to make as many what choices are reasonable to them within the law. I think that on the opt-out, the principal issues seem to be one. There is because the campaign media spending definition is not the same as the definitions of who gets reported for a political committee. There is going to be some PACs may be in a position where they have to tell folks that, well, you may not be disclosed on this side, but you may be disclosed on another side. That was a point that one of the one of the commenters raised, that was the kind of thing where, it may not be, a rule that addresses that. There may be some other way of addressing that down the road. We also, as I said, in one of the comments had to do with the fact that the act allows people to give their consent to their dollars being used for campaign media spending up front. And again, it's like that was one of those issues where we're sort of wanting to focus on, well, the statute already says that. So I think that overall, I think the comments were constructive. The ones we have suggested, and I just want to make sure that we're all working from a common, point. The changes, which again we don't think are substantial, are outlined in the document called in your materials called text for consideration and adoption. There are some changes outlined there and they're underlined. And all of those I think are clarifying and helpful, but don't change the underlying substance of the rule significantly. And I think that, my view is that for the most part, the comments we got did not really, say, we need to, you need to scrap this entire thing and start over. There was one comment from the Campaign Legal Center that did suggest getting rid of a section called 803E, which has to do with when a donor can request to opt out. As I said, when we introduced these rules, part of the reason that particular rule is there is in order to, because we think the question is going to come up through whether, and so the question is whether we answer it now in terms of a rule or not. So we think that given that that's sort of inevitably a question and that it to us, is consistent with the Act's overall thrust of giving donors an opportunity to make choices about how their dollars are used. We think it's consistent with that. One of CLC's direct criticisms was that it believed that if donors have a right to opt out after they've been given the opportunity to opt out and have chosen not to, that will somehow cause covered people. So covered people is the legal term we use now for filers, essentially, or spenders. I'm sorry, Kara.
Yes, excuse me. Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to let the record reflect that Commissioner Titla has signed on.
Oh, thank you, Gary. Yes, Commissioner Titla has joined us. Tom?
Okay. So the CLC's substantive comment, and the reason I'm spending time on this is because they wanted this excised completely, and I feel like it's worth spending a little time on. That covered persons and donors will be in a position where they're always in flux, and covered persons won't be able to make decisions about how to account for the fact someone might decide they want their dollars not used for campaign media spending. On the donor side and the covered person side, on the other hand, the concern has been raised: what do we do with those donors who don't want their dollars to be used for a particular mailing or disagree with something? So so in that respect, I think that where the regulated community is more informed on the consequences of this than perhaps in this context, I think on balance, it's appropriate still to codify that in fact donors can have a way to change their mind. And again, as a regulator, or anybody who's not deeply enmeshed in actual practice of campaign finance in the real world, we don't know how the relationship between donors and covered persons or spenders is going to work in practice. And in fact, that's just the nature of being on the outside looking in. But I think it was striking that the folks who represent the covered person community, the donor community, did not see this as an issue. I think that one last thing I think I ought to mention on that point. One of the other commenters wanted in the confidentiality exemption proceeding to have covered persons sort of in that process. So if I'm a donor and I have a safety issue and I come to the commission through one of the three ways you can do that, which is either court order, statute, or petitioning the commission itself. There was a suggestion that the original source then have to tell covered persons that they are, that their identity is not to be revealed. The reality is, and Campaign Legal Center does observe this in its letter, that not all covered persons and original sources are going to interact with one another. And so if the issue is an exemption from the identity, putting the additional burden on the person who just sought to have their identity protected to have to go out and tell people, hey, my identity is protected, again, seemed like a step into a relationship that the commission really doesn't need to be a part of. And then lastly, on that point, there was another comment suggesting we adopt a rule specific to accounting for donors. So donors have to provide on request from the spender information on where they got the money. The rules we've put forth, one of which is already adopted, talk about a reasonable record keeping process by which you have to be able to explain how your transactions are working. We think that that's sufficient, and that in the event, and if we were to mandate anything about the accounting itself, right? And the rule says you have to keep track of what you're doing. It has to be accurate. You have to be able to share it with somebody in a way that the commission can understand what you're doing. That is all but saying use a reasonable accounting method. But as soon as you put the word reasonable accounting method in a rule, we're going to be in a position where we're going to be evaluating, is the accounting method reasonable? Were the specific rules? I mean, accounting is like the practice of law, a bit of an art and a bit of a science. And we don't get intruding directly into whether or not people are making decisions that are reasonable under accounting standards is probably not where we want to start, this process. So I think the record keeping rules, which no one objected to, plus the fact that the statute itself, does not allow for structuring transactions to evade the act, was sufficient there. Those are sort of the highlights that I wanted to bring out from the evaluation. Obviously, I mean, there are other folks internally who've worked on this with me, so I don't know if there's anything they think that I ought to need to put on the record that I haven't. But those were my main points, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Tom. And just to be clear, staff is recommending that we adopt 801 as it was written, and then we adopt 803, 804, and 806 with non-substantial changes that are clear in the memo with those changes underlined. Are there any questions or comments from members of the commission? Commissioner Chan?
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to, I guess, I don't even know if any of the regulated community who's offered comments or their representatives are here today, but I really appreciate the time they took to review our rules. I mean, I know, they and their clients will be the most impacted by this initiative that voters approved. And so therefore the rules that we're going to be promulgating and that we are promulgating. But I think they obviously took the time to really think about this and gave very thoughtful input. And I also want to commend staff because I know how much time they had to put into this as well. It's a very meaty issue. And I think they deserve our accolades as well. I just wanted to ask one question. I think, Tom, you laid out everything in a way that kind of addressed any questions I had. The only thing, and I don't know if I'm missing the forest for the trees here. The only thing I have a question on is the statecraft request that the commission consider adding in this new subsection F to R2803. I was trying to see if that was an exact kind of duplicate of what's in statute, or if they were trying to thread a needle and address with a little more detail what the procedures would be or what the expectation would be for that situation where somebody gives notice. I'm not opposed to staff's recommendations. And again, I know this may seem minor in the face of the enormity of everything we're tackling here today, but that was, I wondered if there was some benefit to adopting something to address that. But again, I wasn't sure, and I was trying to pull up the statute, and I don't know if Tom can speak to it off the top of his head at the moment, but whether that was an exact duplicate, if there was any benefit to considering adding that in, and also if we did, would it delay the rules? I'm very concerned about getting the rules implemented timely because of the fact that we're already starting our election year, basically.
Thank you, Commissioner Chan. Tom?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Chan, I'm happy to. So this is at page 2 of the statecraft memo. Are we talking about the subsection F or the subsection G?
I was talking about subsection F. Thanks for asking.
Okay. Yeah. So, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Chan, that's a good question. I think the way we see this, and there may be, let me put it this way, there's certainly nothing that we don't think we might look at either as an additional issue down the road, or in some cases, and some of the things that people may see as we work through this may turn out to be legislative issues, and that will just be how it will be. So this is a comment that says, so basically the section ahead of it talks about how you deal with opt-out notices that are mandated by the statute. And then this starts with notwithstanding the foregoing. So it says it's going to be an exception to the overall rule that applies to everyone, right? And the exception is going to be for a covered person that is also a registered political action committee. Okay, so that's just to walk through how this operates. What they proposed to have is an exception to the rest of the rule for political action committees, and then it says that their compliance will be determined for this section and for the opt-out notice itself by including in a written solicitation of funds or in a written receipt provided to a donor within 10 days of receiving the donor's monies, a clear and conspicuous written notice. The PAC is required by Arizona law to publicly report the name, et cetera, of all out-of-state contributors and Arizona residents who contribute more than $100 per election cycle. Okay, so to the extent that they're abiding by that a person is abiding by the statutory language, which in 16972, that there's nothing outside of that they need to have an additional rule. The other potential problem here is that by taking the PAC out of 972 entirely, it basically says if you're a PAC, you're gonna go down an alternate road from 972. And so as we understand this comment, it's basically asking us to create an exception to 972 that we don't understand at this point how that would be statutorily consistent with the existing language. Now, that said, the statute does allow for a person to affirmatively reach out. That's fine. It also allows for a person, there's nothing that would prohibit a person from explaining if they have so you've got a donor under the campaign media spending law who's given you $5,001 or $5,000 and they're at risk of being disclosed. That notice is about campaign media spending. It's not about any other thing. So campaign media spending is not every expenditure by a political committee. It's a subset of that. If the concern here is there's somehow a redundancy or something like that, we will continue to have a dialogue with the regulated community about ways we might be able to, work within the statutory framework for that, or, if in fact someone concludes that there is a redundancy here, that I think could be remedied by legislation. But the reality is that what you're telling your donors under 16972 is just a different thing from what you're telling your donors under 16 under the rest of chapter 6. And so obviously I think it would be a good business practice for a covered person who is in the process of dealing with their donors to tell them the range of ways in which they might be disclosed. But this is not a but it's not something that the statute, at least as we've been able to understand it so far, seems to contemplate. Now, if we're misunderstanding that, I'm sure we'll hear from folks and maybe get a little better understanding. But at this point, and I think the other thing I'll mention about the way that this is put together, goes to your point, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Chan, is this by constructing this with the notwithstanding clause, it essentially, if we were to have, we wouldn't have needed to adopt this as an amendment. Essentially, it's not an amendment that's going to change the. It's self-contained, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It's a new exception that's being brought in. So there's so if we wanted to come back and look at what, how broad the scope of the problem for PACs is and find a little, maybe and get a better understanding of what the statutory perspective that folks have is, we could revisit that, and we're going to be open to that throughout the process. But at this point, we don't have a solid understanding of how we get from the 972 opt-out notice, which goes to campaign media spending, and deals with folks who are giving at a higher level, with the general operation of a PAC. So that was our, so, never say never, right? But we think that at this juncture, we don't see it as an impediment to the rule moving forward. And moreover, we do want to get the certainty associated with the rule in place, and then work from there.
Commissioner Chan, does that address your concern, or did you want to
Yes.
propose
No,
some
that
wording?
was- No, I appreciate all of that very much. And thanks, Tom.
So you're comfortable with the wording as we have it now?
I am, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any other concerns or comments by members of the commission? Are there any members of the public who wish to comment on these four rules, excuse me? I don't see anyone in the room, and I don't see anyone on Zoom either. So I would propose that we consider all four of these rule changes together, meaning 801 as written, plus 803, 804, and 806 with some minor changes as indicated in our material, unless a member of the commission wants to pull out one of those rules and discuss more or handle it separately. What is the preference of the commission as far as a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to move all of those. I have a question about whether how easy it'll be to move all of them and what the language would be as far as just perhaps do we say as presented in the materials with the substantive or with the non-substantive changes as proposed by staff?
I'll turn to Kara for that.
Yes, that would be fine.
Okay. In that case, Mr. Chairman, and hopefully I'm not jumping the gun here, but I'll go ahead and move that we adopt the proposed rules R2 2801, R2 2803, R2 2804, and R2 2806. And to the extent that several of those have some non-substantive changes, that all of that be adopted together by the commission today.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Commissioner Payton. Any discussion among commissioners? I will call a roll. Commissioner Chan,
Aye.
Commissioner Meyer,
Aye.
Commissioner Payton,
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Titla.
Aye.
Thank you. Chair votes aye. The four rules are approved unanimously, 5-0. Thank you very much. Item 5, discussion and possible action on proposed meeting dates for September through December of 2023. Commissioners, you should have all had a chance to review the dates that Ms. Thomas has proposed. And the dates for future meetings are September 21st, October 26th, November 16th, and December 14th. Is there any discussion? Is there a motion to approve these 4 dates for future meetings?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the future meeting dates.
Thank you, Commissioner Chan. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Commissioner Meyer. I'll call the roll. Commissioner Chan,
Aye.
Commissioner Meyer,
Aye.
Commissioner Payton,
Aye.
Commissioner Titla,
Aye.
and chair votes aye. The meeting dates are approved 5-0. Thank you. This is the time for consideration of comments and suggestions from the public. Action taken as a result of public comment will be limited to directing staff to study the matter or rescheduling the matter for further consideration and decision at a later date or responding to criticism. Please limit your comments to no more than 2 minutes. Does any member of the public wish to make comments at this time? Kathy, Paula, does anyone on Zoom want to make a comment? I don't see anyone either here in the room or on Zoom who wants to make a comment. The public may also send comments to the commission by mail or email at ccec@azcleanelections.gov. Item 7, motion to adjourn. At this time, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Commissioner Payton. Is there a second?
Second the
Second.
motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Chan. I'll call the roll. Commissioner Chan,
Aye.
Commissioner Meyer,
Aye.
Commissioner Payton,
Aye.
Commissioner Titla,
Aye.